Hi, I'm Vinod Thourani, a cardiac surgeon at Piedmont Heart Institute in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm also the Bernie Marcus Chairman of Cardiovascular Surgery at the Piedmont Heart Institute. And most importantly, for this webinar today, I'm the chair of the Society of Thoracic Surgeons, or STS, and the American College of Cardiology, or ACC Transcatheter Valve Therapies database. And I'm joined by a very good friend and colleague, Dr. Batchelor, who's going to introduce himself.
Thanks a lot, Vino. So I'm Wayne Batchelor. I'm the president of the Innova Medicine Service Line in Fairfax, Virginia, and I'm an interventional cardiologist, also with the Innova Shar Heart and Vascular. And I also serve in the function as vice chair of the STS ACC TVT Registry. Really excited to be here with you, Vino.
Great, Wayne. Well, I think what we're going to do is just for the next 20 to 25 minutes, we're really going to talk about what I think is one of the most exciting fields of cardiology, cardiac surgery that I've seen almost for the last 15 years since really TAVR came onto the main stage. And this is the tricuspid valve repair. And specifically, I thought it'd be fun for us to talk about the entire TVT registry for transcatheter tricuspid valve repair, as we know, the TriClip, which has been FDA and CMS approved. So it'd be nice for us to kind of talk about and encourage all of our participants to really look at what the TriClip is a little bit about, but also most importantly about the next 20, 25 minutes is about the TVT registry and how we prepare for this post-approval study that'll be ongoing to look at the outcomes for the TriClip procedure. So maybe we start off, Wayne, just a little bit about the background and inception of the STS ACC TVT registry. How did it begin, and what is it, and when did it start? Can you just kind of start with that?
Yeah, Vino, when we look back on the inception of this registry, in my opinion, this is one of the most important seminal moments of both cardiac surgery and interventional cardiology. We were just in the beginnings of trying to understand how to develop new therapies, particularly transcatheter aortic valve replacement. And after Lang-Privier did the first procedure in 2002, as it came into the U.S. market, we had to have a good understanding of how to collect data. You remember those days, Vino? You were one of the early pioneers, and I can recall vividly the risk that these patients were undergoing to get these transcatheter valve therapies as an alternative to open heart surgery. As we can recall, we didn't know how that experiment was going to play out in the real world. I remember, Vino, you actually trained our site when I was in Tallahassee, and you came and we went up to Atlanta. And you remember it was a risky endeavor, these 24 French sheath catheters. So really the registry was born out of that important legacy. And I got to tell you, I think it's one of the best things that has come out of the cardiology and intervention and cardiac surgical worlds in the last 15 years or so.
No, I totally agree, Wayne. At first there was a heart team, mainly revolving around heart failure therapy, transplantation, but this really brought it to into the main stage, I think. And what it did do, and it showed, Wayne, now over 19 years since I've done my first TAVR, what it showed that we could all come together with the government and the medical societies and other stakeholders, especially industry, where we can really create this once in a generation type of database. And so the beautiful thing that I really enjoyed about this is that it also was allowed us to have every single patient who had TAVR go into the database. And that really has allowed us to really talk about the real world experience, which is last year, as you know, over 100,000 TAVRs done in the United States. I remember when there were 100 done in the United States. Why was this created, though? We know that it was great and when it started and who started this, but why was it created? Wayne, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the primary impetus was to have a universal platform that would collect data in every single patient treated in the United States with this therapy, that would also pull together the necessary multidisciplinary team and ensure that hospital reimbursement could be facilitated by CMS in a post-market surveillance arena. Remember, we were kind of building the plane as we were flying it. We were trying to sort of figure out who benefited most, how patients really did in the real world for these, at the time, fairly risky procedures. So the imperative was to collect safety and efficacy data in the real world setting soon after FDA approval. And we had to do that with something called CED, or continued evidence development, that the CMS mandated. So it was really the coming together of multiple stakeholders who saw the academic merit of this, the regulatory avenue that was facilitated through it, the payment avenue, the multidisciplinary team, and most importantly, doing what's right for the patient, which is figuring out the science of how these valve platforms perform in the real world in live patients outside the constructs of a classical randomized trial. So really, I mean, it really, when I look back on it, I still think it's one of the best things that we've done in this field in a long time. And of course, the registry serves now as the central repository in which we can get all of our valve information as we roll out new therapies.
Absolutely, Wayne. I totally agree with everything that you've said. And I will only add really is that in randomized trials, at least for TAVR, we've done about 8,000 or 9,000 patients in all TAVR trials using self-expanding and balloon expandable valves. So let's say 9,000 patients were randomized. We've now done over 500,000 patients in the database. So really, we can get into some really nitty-gritty, large, real-world data, and that I think will serve. It'll serve the physicians, but most importantly, why do we do all this? We do it for patients, and we do it because we want to understand what patients are good for therapies and maybe which therapies aren't the best for patients. And that's really what I think the TVT registry has allowed us to do, is to fine tune from the randomized select patients that we have in these trials to real world experience, but also not from 30 or 40 sites, but from 800 sites. And so just to remind everyone, about just north of 800 sites are doing transcatheter aortic valve therapies, and just north of 500 sites are doing mitral therapies. And we'll see where, Wayne, I think we'll see where tricuspid lands over the repair and replacement technologies within TVT. So let's go a little bit, Wayne, into the impact. We talked about how it was originated. We talked a little bit about why it was created, but let's talk a little bit about the impact. What has the registry done now for over the last over a decade now that we first started the first patients within the registry?
Yeah, originally, of course, the primary reason for this, as we mentioned, was to collect post-market surveillance data on real-world procedures. But, over the last 14, 15 years, what the registry has also served are multiple stakeholders, including academicians who've published. We have hundreds of really high-quality papers that have come from this registry that have helped us understand how these devices intersect with the body and which subgroups, how subgroups do. I can think of things like bicuspid valve outcomes and having the statistical power to have these hypotheses tested in a large cohort of patients. Of course,
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about too, Wade, is bicuspid. That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, we really remember when we were just trying to figure out, is it safe to treat bicuspid patients? Well, lo and behold, within a short period of time, we had thousands of patients that we could put into a really robust observational study and have that answer for us. So we've, obviously there's the academic merit to it. Obviously, it's served multiple other purposes. It served the FDA and the regulatory process. It allows the FDA to render decisions on devices, knowing that they're going to get more robust information in the real world setting very soon after they render approval of new devices. It's kind of nice to know that if the FDA says yes to a device, every single patient who gets that device it often is going to be recorded, their data included, and we'll have that information, which is really, really powerful. And of course, CMS has used it as a platform to sort of link in their patient population payment to a registry mandate, which is still required for even TAVR till today.
No, I totally agree. I remember when one of the earlier studies that we did out of TVT Registry was TAVR or TAVI in patients who had previous mitral prosthesis. So none of the patients in the previous trials or randomized trials allowed us to do that. Now, remember when I queried that a long time ago, we had 1,500 patients that immediately showed up. So it was, people were scared to do that procedure because there was no data on it. Then all of a sudden the TVT Registry produced a couple of thousand patients, and we were able to show how safe that is. Now, nobody thinks about not doing a transcatheter valve therapy in a patient with a previous surgical mitral valve. So it really has, I think, changed a really impact of how patients are treated. Again, that's kind of our primary goal of maintaining outcomes and how patients are treated. I do agree with you. I think it's helped with guidelines and reimbursement. In so many examples, it's tough in 20 minutes to go through that. Sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
The other advantage, of course, we're both end users of the registry. Although we play a leadership role in the registry, the reality is every time we go to work, we're using the registry. And so as the end user, I really love the executive summaries, the data that you can glean as a center, as a site from the registry, and get really useful internal data that helps you understand how to build your program and improve outcomes within your own walls. So that the QI piece to this can't be underemphasized as well,
No, that's a great point. We use it very similar to STS. Every quarterly, we have 4 programs that do heart surgery from the STS database. We monitor that quarterly. But also, we have 3 programs that do catheter valves. And every quarter, we go through with all 3 sites together at the same time, all of the quality metrics. And I think that's incredibly important. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So it's not just taking care of the global patient population. We're now getting down nitty gritty into the patients that you and I take care of daily and weekly. So who does this serve? How does it help hospitals at the local level? What in addition to quality, how does it work with the heart team and collaborative approaches? Has that benefited you at all?
Yeah.
And what other components of, maybe talk about industry a little bit here, of who uses the registry?
Yeah. So of course we haven't really spoken a lot about industry, but obviously industry is a key stakeholder in all this, and industry uses the registry, very frequently to garner information about how their device is performing in real time. That's exceedingly helpful. And certainly if we see, we can have an idea about early safety signals from this registry. This is one of the things that I think we've really done right in this complicated United States healthcare system, is these types of national registries where we're getting virtually 100% capture of a procedure. It allows us to get all that information evaluated quickly, so that it doesn't take very long before you're going to see an adverse signal on safety, because you're going to have these thousands of patients very rapidly. So I think it serves industry and can help them understand how their device is performing in the real world. It can understand us, and it can give us information about subgroups. And of course, at the local level, sites can use it for their own QI purposes, as we mentioned. You can actually have scorecards created for your operators. We do that at Innova, so that so the operators kind of have a sense for how their outcomes compare over time relative to their peers. And of course, the public reporting aspect of this is very important, because the public now can also look up centers and understand in general terms how their particular center is faring relative to the rest of the nation. And so there's a lot of different stakeholders that benefit. We talked about the FDA, CMS, industry, academics, patients, and patient advocacy groups. Really, there's probably 5 or 6 stakeholders that directly benefit from this registry. And given how fragmented healthcare is in the United States, this is one of those things where a lot of folks are coming together for a common purpose and doing it, in my opinion, so far the right way.
That's perfect, Wayne. So let's pivot to one of the most, like I said at the very beginning, the most exciting things that I do now, which is tricuspid valve therapies. I did 2 tricuspid valve repairs today, but a lot of patients now are getting transcatheter therapies for their tricuspid valve, especially isolated. Mine are both concomitant with mitral disease, but very rarely are surgeons operating on isolated tricuspid valve disease. When they do operate, the results are great. So, that's a whole different webinar to talk about, which is the appropriate patient. But let's talk a little bit about the TVT registry and what's the benefit for tricuspid valve disease and some of these new therapies that are coming up. What should the audience listening really start to understand about the TriClip and other tricuspid valve therapies?
Well, entering this arena of tricuspid valve repair and replacement in the last few years has been wonderful for patients. It's been very good for health systems and operators because it's created a completely new avenue of therapy for all parties involved. But as many questions as it's answered, it's raised an equal number. So we got a lot of stuff we've got to figure out within the realm of tricuspid valve transcatheter therapies. Who benefits the most? What's the relationship between success and long-term outcome and failure and long-term outcome? What do we know about long-term safety and efficacy? What do we know about heart failure hospitalizations relative to these therapies? What's the interaction between the device and leads? I mean, this registry is going to play a pivotal role in really untangling all these questions that so many of us have in our mind, and we're just anxious to see answered. The TRILUMINATE pivotal trial was exceedingly helpful. It confirmed the safety and efficacy of transcatheter tricuspid valve edge-attach repair, and I think we really stepped off with a lot of confidence knowing that we had a safe and effective procedure, but still a lot of answers remain, and a lot of questions remain that have to be answered. And I think the registry is going to play a pivotal role. So now that we're 1 year after basically commercialization, the key thing here is how are we doing in the next several years, and how can we show how this device and these types of procedures are really operating in the real world. This registry is going to be crucial for that. So I think, for the folks that are listening, it's imperative that we do a good job with the data collection in the registry. We get our patients enrolled who are undergoing tricuspid valve repair and with transcatheter devices, and we complete follow-up in a very robust fashion so we have good science that will give us the answer to these questions.
No, Wayne, that's perfect. And I would say that, just to add on that, I think that there also, because this was done in so limited number of sites overall, we'll get a better look at patient demographics, those that are in rural settings and urban settings, those minorities versus non-minorities. I think we'll start to understand, because in these smaller studies, original studies, that's what you need. They're highly selected patients, but now we'll start to get real world data for a variety of patient demographics, which we haven't had before. So I think those are really powerful aspects of TVT is going to be able to provide us the information to hone in on which patients are appropriate, and then also be able to help us with the specific patient populations that you need thousands of patients to understand the benefits and how that works out. So just to go back a little bit as far as the benefits to the participating sites in the registry, I think, maybe the hospitals we've talked a little bit about. Who else do you think kind of benefits on participating in the registry? Let's be a little bit specific to the tricuspid valve.
Yeah, I think it's really important, this notion of the value proposition for the registry in this tricuspid arena. It's significant. We know that the science is going to be important in this regard. We discussed that. But remember, we're going to modify the existing registry to be tricuspid valves informative. In other words, we're going to modify the existing case report form so that we're collecting just a few more data elements. It won't be overly burdensome, but just a few more elements that will capture some of these critical questions, things that relate to liver disease, that relate to tricuspid valve success echocardiographically, RV annulus dimensions, and other things that imagers might be interested in. So that's number one. We're going to have a data element added to the existing registry to collect a tricuspid valve module. And then, of course, these reports are going to be available for sites. So sites can track how they're doing at their own site as they roll out these new tricuspid valve procedures, and TriClip in particular. And remember, you'll be able to benchmark your site, of course, to the national trends and understand how you're performing relative to the rest of the nation. And then finally, of course, there are going to be some opportunities for training and educational opportunities offered by the registry throughout the year, and of course, all the data that will be presented in the scientific sessions. So there's a lot of value to this registry, and remember, it's going to form the basis for us understanding how tricuspid valve repair is performing in the real world.
Yeah, there's just a way to add on to some of your remarkably point right on point of just to reiterate kind of what you said, Wayne, on those. Not only just the patient demographics, but echoes. Please, please, please put in the echo parameters that are part of the database. We really can't understand how these are functioning well and what patients are the best for which procedure if we don't have the good echo data. So really want you listening, for those participants, to put in the 30-day echo data and the 1-year echo data and really hone in on the KCCQ scores at baseline, 30 days, and 1 year. That's really a challenge for us. FDA really wants us to have at least a 75% compliance on these measurements. So it's unbelievably important. Joan Michaels has already recorded a short 15-minute presentation, some of these key items. We will also be able to link that for you to look at. Joan Michaels is the glue, works for the NCDR, who is really the point person for TVT Registry, in addition to Carol from the STS. But we really want you to concentrate on echoes and also the KCCQ scores at baseline, 30 days, and 1 year. Just your thoughts, Wayne, on those two or three important aspects?
Under John Carroll's leadership and then yours, we've been able to really understand just how important that 1-year follow-up is for these transcatheter therapies. We've emphasized this. To be honest with you, we haven't historically done as good a job as we would like on getting that 1-year data in, and that is crucial. We can't only show how patients are doing at 30 days and then shut our eyes. So this registry that is, again, a requirement, an FDA regulatory requirement for linked to the approval of TriClip, it's imperative that we get that 1-year follow-up, both KCCQ at 30 days and echo, and at 1 year, both of those, KCCQ and echo, and office follow-up, so that we can report this out. The FDA needs it, our science needs it, our patients deserve it, and we've got to get above the 75% follow-up rate. This should really be at 80 to 90% at 1 year. So I'm glad you mentioned it, Vino. If we had to sort of say the key take-home messages relative to this TVT registry collection within the TriClip post-approval study, it's going to be critical that we have the data collected with uniformity at baseline, 30 days and 1 year, again, clinical echo and KCCQ. And of course, we also do as good a job as we can getting a diverse patient population. This is where we're going to really have the opportunity to study how this rolls out across women, men, rural patients, underrepresented and other minorities. And that's going to be crucial. Older adults, younger adults. So we really try to get those diverse patient populations. And in fact, the registry is requesting, the post-market approval study is requesting that we get at least 100 members of various racial and ethnic groups that the U.S. Census recognizes African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, Alaskan Natives, and Pacific Islanders, et cetera. So really a very important take-home message, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because that's going to be where this is either going to be successful or not is in the follow-up.
Wayne, thank you so much. That really was perfect. And as far as the different important aspects for all of our participants of the registry to really concentrate on. I think that Wayne and I really want to leave you with top 3 takeaways that we have, hopefully, that you've understood over the last 25 minutes or so. Number 1, enroll every patient you treat in the STS ACC TVT Registry. It's unbelievably important for us to gather the information to provide back to you so you can take care of your patients better. Number 2, it's important to follow and submit the TR severity and the KCCQ scores at baseline, at 30 days, and very importantly, at 1 year. And then thirdly, the real-world post-market insights will be crucial in driving clinical practice, but they'll be really on the shoulders of Wayne, yourself, and myself, our sites, but also the other hundreds of sites that'll be doing this in the United States. So Wayne, I've had a great time talking to you about transcatheter tricuspid valve repair and the TVT registry. It's both very important to you and I hope that the listeners also kind of understand our passion for this, and we'll get on the train to really making this a very successful pathway for this new technology. Wayne, you want to close it out for us?
Yeah, I think that, you summarized it quite well, but I would just add, Vino, we should be proud of the STS TVT registry, the ACC STS TVT registry. It's played a pivotal role in our understanding of device therapy, both safety and efficacy. It's been a beacon of hope for the rest of the world because we've got tremendous data that's being published out of it. And a lot of other sites beyond just those in the United States rely on that information. The question is, how can we make it valuable and useful as we learn more about tricuspid valve transcatheter therapies, in particular TriClip? So let's knock it out of the ballpark. Let's really do a good job for the sake of our patients, our sites, our health systems, the FDA, CMS, and other stakeholders. I think we all deserve it, and the answers to many questions lie in the successful carrying out of this registry.
Great. Well, thank you, Wayne, and we will hopefully see all of you soon.